Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Heal to Heal podcast. We have got an incredible show for you today. You know that this show is all about uncovering stories of people that have turned their deepest pain into powerful purpose. And our guest today has done that in a truly remarkable way. Not only that, but aspects of his story really resonate deeply with my own. Just like me, he was told that chronic pain would define his reality. And like me, he refused to accept that narrative. Dan Esposito is a former NFL athlete turned powerhouse wellness innovator. That's what I like to say about him. After battling a laundry list of debilitating conditions, fibromyalgia, degenerative arthritis, he was told that he was going to need all these joint replacements. Well, not so much. Not only did he completely reverse those diagnoses, but he went on to become a two-time USA track and field masters national champion. I hope after the age of 50. Are you kidding me? That's amazing. And his transformation didn't just stop with the physical. This man spent a lot of the time of his life as an agnostic, but his journey to overcome ultimately led him to embrace faith in a more spiritual focus. So Dan is now devoted to helping other people experience the kind of healing that he's experienced. He's got some wonderful products and methods he's going to tell us about. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's really exciting learning about some of the things that you have overcome. It's really extraordinary. But could we kind of go back to your life just to kind of set the stage, like what your life was before you started going into these pain issues? I mean, you were doing all these different things, right? Athletically.
Yeah. So when I joined the fibromyalgia message boards on Facebook, I'm getting everybody's story. And I had a lot of childhood trauma, and a lot of people were talking about childhood trauma and how that could contribute to chronic pain. And while I don't really subscribe 100% to the childhood trauma piece,
Yeah.
there's a lot of metabolic pathways that happen when you have anxiety and trauma
Mhm.
and things are going on. But, my parents divorced very young. My mother remarried twice. Both of the men were alcoholics.
Wow.
20-year Marine. They were very abusive physically,
Mm.
mentally, emotionally. And I moved around a lot. I was in 5 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 3 high schools.
Whoa.
So very early on, I recognized that athletics was the way that I fit in, right? It was like my superpower.
Mhm.
I was always the fastest kid or the second fastest kid in any school that I went to. I went from, doing splits and backflips and all sorts of things and being able to run very fast and literally being the most flexible guy in my group of friends, group of athletes, to where if I was to turn my neck, now, I can turn my neck pretty normally now, but I mean, to drive a car and to look back to see, I would literally have to turn everything to try to get a view of, if any cars were coming. If you would see something on the floor, you would negotiate your movements of the day with all right, am I going to go pick that up? Because every time you go to pick something up, we have all these pain receptors in our body. They're not really pain receptors per se. They're sensory perceptors, but medicine wants you to think they're just pain receptors. And they're kind of like cat whiskers. They lay in your fascia for the most part and in your collagen, and they give you sort of balance in the world, but they send signals to the brain. So when anybody ever says, pain is a pain processing disorder, it's not. The pain is actually there. You're activating these pain receptors and they're sending signals to the brain. Imagine your body's filled with sticks and rocks, right?
Okay.
That's what having fibromyalgia, oxalate damage is like. So just the motion of stopping was painful. Just to
Yeah.
stop and turn around. You know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
even just to do work and heavy work and things like that, but I found myself to be extremely unuseful, right? And I think a man's job is to be useful, right? I need to be
Yeah.
useful to my family. I have 2 children. They're both, I have two different moms. We all have a great relationship. It's wonderful. But it all kind of started at the beginning, really with my first son's birth. At that time, a whole bunch of things happened. So I was making $500,000 in the banking industry. Now, I'm a kid who part of my life grew up in a trailer park, right? So
Yeah.
I was very poor growing up for the most part. End up, I'm doing really well. I had this little tiny football career. I've got this great job, and it was in the banking industry, and the banking industry fell apart. Right? It was about
What?
15 years ago. At the same time, I was going through a breakup with someone who was a wonderful person. I just didn't feel like it was like my soulmate, like my person. So that was very difficult. And then I had met Christine, my first child's mom, and we had a baby, and I was very stressed about that because I'm just starting this energy brokerage. I
Yeah.
transitioned from banking into energy, making no money, having a child on the way.
Drastic
And
stress.
the way that I work is very intensely, like I'm going to get down to it. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn the energy business. It's a new business that's coming in the Pennsylvania area with deregulation. And I'm just going to sit at home and figure it out. And I would order pizza. And Domino's had a special, two
That
large pizzas for one. So that would be my lunch and dinner for 3 days a week, and I could feel the inflammation happening in my body. And I don't think most people actually know what inflammation is. They think it's just like an event, this thing that happens that's attacking you. But the reality is it's a healing cycle, right? The end result is breaking down the fibrin, the scar tissue, right? And that process doesn't happen till much later in the fasting cycle. At the time, I was also, I didn't know much about treating myself right. My stepmom has her doctorate in nutrition, but even sort of mainstream nutrition has nutrition wrong in many cases. And so seed oils were
yeah.
introduced into my life.
Mhm.
I was eating a ton of manufactured foods, and they're highly oxidizing and cause inflammation, which is going to leave behind the fibrin, but also the damaged cells. And that gets into your muscles and messes up your fascia and your muscle network. And it creates this whole problem. Most people don't want to take accountability for what they're doing to themselves because we're not educated enough to know what we're doing. And then when you tell them that, well, they've been indoctrinated so much by, seed oils are harmless and manufactured foods can be healthy and all these types of things that becomes ingrained in our sort of culture. Seed oils aren't bad. They're made from plants and plants are healthy. And so, it was just basically sort of a slow descent. And then all of a sudden, once that pizza thing started happening, old age, I kind of thought it was, but really, I was just not treating my body well. And then my lymphatic system basically shut down because I had so much inflammation going on. And part of the inflammation process is the white blood cells are going to go repair the area and give off lymph.
Mhm.
So that's happening constantly in my body. And then there's another interesting thing. When you start that inflammation cycle, there's that cytokine release. Well, to manage that, your body, your thyroid releases a chemical to manage that. So a lot of people who have thyroid issues actually have inflammation issues, and the thyroid is just over responding to the inflammation. So just kind of throw that in there if somebody here has thyroid issues.
Well, that's amazing, and I'll let you continue, but so you're so knowledgeable about this. So what happened? The pizza thing's happening, things continue to go south.
Yeah. And then, so, if you go onto my Instagram, you can see a picture of me with my face. It looks like a balloon. I mean, it
Wow.
literally, I'm just filled up with lymph, not knowing what's going on. I went to my doctor 5 or 6 times. I'm like, what's going on with me? I have no motivation. Trying to stay active, but I'm sweating all the time. My hair's falling out. I'm gaining all this cortisol weight, basically. My feet are sweating all the time. Now, all your markers are good, da 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 da, whatever. So anyway, I'm filling up with all this lymph, and then I decide I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out what's going on. And so I start looking in the wrong directions at first.
Uh-oh.
Netflix, right? Netflix is not where you should get any health advice whatsoever. But there was a documentary, and there was two of them, and they're about juicing. You right? And so I thought, oh, these superfoods, spinach and beets and things like that, that I think are so good for you. And I didn't know why they were good for you. Couldn't really find any information.
Okay.
They were just called superfoods. So I start juicing spinach and beets, drinking almond milk. And what I didn't realize I was doing is dumping oxalic acid into my body. And
Wow.
oxalic acid is a little molecule. It's like a nanoparticle that's in the plant. It's a plant defense chemical designed to mess up whatever's eating it. So when you juice spinach and juice beets or take beet powder, almond milk, that little molecule will leak out through your gut and start building oxalates, which are kidney stones,
Hmm.
basically, all throughout your soft tissue.
Wow.
And they're especially damaging for women's health. They're really linked to fibroids and hysterectomies. And I was fortunate enough I just started listening. This had gone on for a while. Now I'm in massive chronic pain. The oxalates do so many things to your body that
Mhm.
cause stiffness. So now the lymphatic thing was a problem, but it wasn't causing this massive amount of pain and stiffness. The oxalates and the downward spiral from all of that really accelerated that piece of it. First thing I did, and I was super lucky, I'm sitting at like 265 pounds. I'm just heavy. I can barely move. I can't lift my shoulders, just kind of like this. And a friend of mine, we were at this networking event, and she's like, Dan, what's wrong? Both my knees were the size of softballs for like
Wow.
8 months. And I was like, oh, my knees are so swollen. I can't get them to come down. I tried a bunch of stuff. Leah, I tried aspirin shots. I've had my knee drained a couple times. All this pus came out. And she goes to me, why don't you rub some castor oil on your knee? Now I'm like, okay, everybody at the time was like in this MLM selling like essential oils. And I was like, oh
Right.
God, this girl's going to try to sell me essential oils. She's looking at me like, no, you really have to do this. And I'm like, I've never taken advice from anyone in my entire life. Like,
There's honesty, right?
yeah. And so I'm like, you know what? She's so adamant about this. I'm just going to do it. What can I lose? So I get the castor oil from CVS. I rub about a shot glass worth on me. The next day I wake up and the swelling in my knees were completely gone.
Wow.
That puffy face that I had all came down. All the lymph in my
Dang,
body was draining out of me, and I was blowing it out of my nose for the next 3 days.
that's crazy.
So now I went from my one good day per month to half the month was starting to like kind of clear up for me,
Wow.
brain fog going away. And so then I decided I was going to watch a podcast a few months later on proper hydration because I had drank some good water. Before this, I was drinking all that acidic, really cheap bottled water. And when you pull
Uh,
acidic water into a cell, it creates cellular dysfunction, right? And it can lead to cancer and all sorts of other diseases. So I had just started drinking some good water and I felt really good almost immediately. So I'm like, all right, I got to find a podcast or something on proper hydration because maybe I'm just dehydrated, right? I thought maybe that it was a simple fix. It turns out it was this massive overhaul of the body. So I found a Dr. Mercola podcast. Are you familiar with Dr. Mercola?
I'm not.
He's like the first guy that was labeled a quack on Facebook. So you
Okay.
knew he was in the right direction, right? He had Dr. Zach Bush on. Zach Bush, very spiritual guy, really into mitochondrial health, cell health. And what he was talking about on that podcast was hydration at the cellular level, meaning actually pulling in good mineral water into the cell and making that cell healthy. The next thing in the Dr. Mercola podcast was red light therapy. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to go try red light therapy. The next thing in the series was fasting. I was doing these like sort of intermittent fasting. And then the same friend who told me to put the castor oil on my knees challenged me to do a 3-day fast. And I was like, I can, anything that anyone can do, I can do. So I'm going to do a 3-day fast, right? So I do this 3-day fast. And then at day 1.5, day 2, as we're getting into day 2, I'm getting this click, 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 click. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like my back is loosening up. Now,
Wow.
when I say it felt significant, I thought I'm just around the corner from healing. It's incredible how slow this process takes. But the fact that something is happening was enough to keep me pushing forward. So then I had to figure out, okay, why does red light therapy and fasting cause this? And initially I thought it was because they're both creating a sulfur response, and sulfur helps resynthesize collagen.
Okay.
Collagen is very important to have healthy collagen. Most people
Okay.
do not have healthy collagen. So what I later found out was that at 20 hours of fasting, what happens is your body releases enzymes from the liver. And then those enzymes that are normally digesting food are now looking for proteins to snip, right? To sort of use as food. And one of those proteins is the fibrin.
Yeah.
Inflammation is not your body attacking itself. It's a healing cycle that has many different stages. When you have rheumatoid arthritis, it just means you have a lot of C-reactive proteins in your blood at that time, and they will stay around for 36 hours. So even if you didn't eat for the 12 hours before your blood work, they're still in your system, right? And that means the rest of the inflammation cycle is going to happen. So rheumatoid arthritis is just sort of like pre-fibromyalgia or
Okay.
pre-arthritis in other areas or whatever you want to call it. Then the glue happens. That's the blood clot. That clot becomes a hardened fibrin, right? And then collagen weaves its way into that area to provide support. White blood cells come repair the area. Once it's repaired, they go away. The red blood cells come back in. You can now have oxygen and energy delivered back into the tissue. But that fibrin has to go away, right? And then hopefully that collagen is going to disappear and resynthesize into better
Mhm.
collagen. But at 20 hours, like nobody's hitting that 20-hour mark to cleave the fibrin. Once it's cleaved, snipped, the body can start slowly breaking it down. Now, initially, what it feels like is you clip it, oh, I've loosened up, and you think the whole area is just going to fall apart, but the
Yeah.
body's just slowly removing these things. And my theory is that the body just knows what it can get rid of, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to overwhelm the system, so it creates some sort of damage. So, and then then inflammation process is completed once the fibrin goes away. So the problem is we don't allow for that process to happen. And every little event that we're putting into our body that's creating inflammation, and 75% of our food supply is heavily manufactured foods, all creating inflammation in the body, especially if there's seed oils and folic acid in them. So over time, that spaghetti or pizza that we've eaten will catch up to us because it's
Yeah.
going to deposit so much fibrin, fibrosis, fibromyalgia, right? So it's all linked to the fibrin. But then there's a bunch of other things that are happening with the body at the same time that are contributing to this mess, and that's oxidative stress,
Okay.
right? And the seed oils are really contributing a ton to the oxidative stress, and that's basically cell death. And then there's an imbalance of omega-3s and omega-6s in the body. Too much omega-6, and then it causes cell death. And that's, the majority of our food supply is
Wow.
rich in these seed oils, heavily processed seed oils. So, this is kind of the kick that I'm on now that I'm just getting
Yeah.
into is replenishing the muscle tissue with the omega-3s. So like cod liver oil is really rich in
Yeah.
omega-3s to sort of get rid of the sixes out of that area that's causing all of that cell death, stiffness, atrophy of the muscles. There's oxidative stress, there's inflammation, there's poor collagen growth, which is contributing to chronic pain. There's 4 amino acids that most people are getting in their collagen supplement. There's 4 cofactors that most people are not getting that tell the amino acids how to build the collagen correctly:
Yeah.
vitamin C, manganese, copper, and zinc. So if you're not getting those in your diet, you need to be supplementing with them to build healthy collagen. And collagen wraps everything in the body. So every single muscle fiber, and there's trillions of muscle fibers, are wrapped in a layer called an endomysium of collagen. That collagen has to be able to glide against one another so your muscles can move, like a fresh paintbrush,
Wow.
right? Once the paintbrush gets filled with paint, they don't twist, they don't move, they're hardened. And that's kind of what's happening to the muscle tissue inside the body with all the inflammation, oxidative stress, poor collagen growth, oxalates, like we talked about with the spinach, and then a couple other. Ossification is another one that I'm just starting to really get into that is, your sodas and any caffeine drink that you have in one sitting that has more than 400 milligrams of caffeine is going to contribute to ossification. And that's where your muscles turn to bone, right?
Yeah.
So all these conditions happen and you want to undo them, right?
Yeah.
And so then I have to figure out, how do we undo these things? What's holding them together? What I learned was that there are chemical bonds that hold this stuff together. And all you have to do is cleave the chemical bond and the body can start getting rid of it. So in my supplement, Flexibility Fuel, one of the things in there is a proteolytic enzyme. And you can just go on Amazon and buy these things. All my ingredients are on my website. You don't have to buy my supplement. And so the proteolytic enzymes mimic the enzymes in the liver, right? So
Yeah.
they're going to go through your body looking for these fibrins and snipping them. And most people feel it pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
They're like, ooh, something happened. Like within a day, 2 weeks or less, right? It's like most people are feeling this because what's in there are these active compounds that are adding an electron to the pain maker or offender, I like to call it to keep with the football theme. It's adding an electron, causing it to split. Now you've got this free electron, right, that can cause oxidative stress, but I have alpha lipoic acid in my supplement, which is going to donate an electron to that unpaired electron to stabilize it.
Yeah.
Right. And then there, some other stuff in there that gets rid of glycation is another thing that's really interesting. So let me go back and we'll talk
Yeah.
about the thing that we talked about, my biblical journey in all of this, because I think it's
Yeah. I would love to hear
super
about that.
important. So early on, and a lot of this had to do with the child, the abuse, the physical abuse and things like that I had from my stepfathers. I really rejected the idea that there could be a God, because how could this be happening to my life?
Yeah.
Like, how could someone be watching out for me? That makes me emotional. Anyway, um, so there were two passages in the Bible that really cemented my thinking that there was no God and God would not make up these arbitrary rules. And the one was, don't eat swine, for it's unclean. Right? I was like, why would God make something so tasty,
I can't
something
hear
we
this.
can't have? Right? So what happens when you eat swine? It's a process called glycation. And glycation is when you have a sugar molecule or high fructose corn syrup, which is 10 times more damaging, and it meets a protein or a fat. And it causes this process called glycation, which is like a thin film of like protein, like that you'll
Okay.
see on barbecue, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so e- um, when you eat, you're allowed to have 15,000 of these advanced glycation end products. That's kind of the damage that's done. Your body can get rid of about 15,000 of these
Okay.
units. 3 strips of bacon is 90,000.
Wow.
So when you're eating, a keto diet, you're eating a lot of bacon and stuff like that, you're causing this event to happen within the body. When you're drinking soda, you're causing this event to happen in the body. Sugar causing this event to happen within the body. But pork
Wow.
and high fructose corn syrup are at the very, very top of that list. And so it's interesting. I saw a TED talk on it, which alerted me to this thing. The guy who was the expert said, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. Well, fortunately, my angel told me there's something you can do about it. And there's a couple different polyflavonoids that are well studied, right? All of this stuff that I have is everything's well studied. The medical literature is there. So quercetin, which is also a good antihistamine, and rutin, rutin, which is in my supplement, breaks down the glycation. Right. And it's same thing, adding an electron to the chemical bond, causing it to break, and then the body can get rid of it.
Can we interrupt you for just a second? Because I got to know
Absolutely.
this. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
the way that you speak about all these things, first of all, it's very educational. And just listening to you, I'm having sort of a lot of epiphanies about some of the things that are in my diet.
Sure.
So, you have become so knowledgeable about this. And then you've got to tell us how you started to get that. Because obviously, I do believe, obviously, that God was given, helping at least guide you to wisdom that was going to help you. When did you go from that belief, to, no God, there's something going on?
Yeah. So there are sort of two events that really stick out to me. Is the first, so Kate, my second son's mom, 3 months before he was born, I was like, I got to fix this. Right. I was like, she's younger than me. I'm an older father. I'm 53 now. He's 8. Right. And I was like, I can't be a good father and a good partner in this shape. I'm in constant pain,
Yeah.
anxious. I'm not useful. And I was at the gym. I'm weighing 265 pounds. I said out loud, I said, I'm going to fix this. Right. So I said it out to the universe and they
Yeah.
heard me. But the thing that really changed everything, my other business is I own an energy brokerage. We broker electricity and gas for commercial clients. And we were at this event that one of our suppliers was putting on, a golf event, and everyone got sick. Everyone had food poisoning. And so first off, I had to be in the energy business for me to have this epiphany. We had to qualify for this event. They had to serve whatever was served in order to make everybody sick. And one of the things that had to have been served was pineapple. Okay. So the first thing I think of was maybe it was the pineapple. And then something inside my brain said pineapple contains bromelain, right? I did not know that. I didn't even know
You're like,
what
wait a
bromelain
minute.
was. And
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Mhm.
okay,
Okay.
what is bromelain? And I look, and it's bromelain is used as a commercial meat tenderizer. It gets rid of the fibrosis in farm animals. I had a tear come out of my eye because in the fibromyalgia thing and all this stuff, I hadn't even looked at fibrins yet. Like
Yeah.
I was looking at collagen and oxidative stress and oxalates. And the most obvious thing, which is why I think everyone should know what inflammation is the fibrin, that protein that's left behind after inflammation, that is very much like a cheap water bottle, right? All
Okay.
that cracking that you hear,
Yeah.
that's the fibrin. That's that crunchy, like almost like a water bottle inside your soft
Wow.
tissue that's bending but not breaking. So it was at that point where I was just like, okay, like something just
Son.
told me that. And there was
Yeah.
another situation where I was out meditating. I created this meditation practice called 33 breaths, right?
Okay.
And obviously 33 is, the healing number. It's Jesus's number. And you're basically doing 11 breaths for you, prayer hands up on 11, 11 breaths for your gratitudes, and then 11 breaths to connect
I love
your
that.
pineal gland to the energy of the universe. So I'm out doing my stuff and I'm staring at this star, Arcturus. Arcturus is a really interesting star. It's a very, very bright star, flashy, neon looking plasma star. And I must have stared at it for 15 minutes. And then I opened up my social media as I'm sitting there when I was done.
Yeah.
The first video that I saw was on a thing called Chianca piedra. It's the stonebreaker herb. It's a South American herb that is known to reduce oxalates down,
Wow.
right? And oxalates being one of the major contributing factors to chronic pain. I was like, wow, how did this very obscure herb that I had heard of once before, but I forgot about it, and I since introduced it back into my protocol. How did that herb show up? I've never seen it before ever again, or, on social media as the first thing that popped up in the hundreds of millions of videos that could have come up. And so it was just like, okay, I feel like I had already been getting information downloaded.
Yep.
And so I just feel like there's a really strong connection that we have with the universe and the energy
Yep.
of the universe. Those were really the big epiphanies that where I was like, okay, someone's watching out for me.
That's awesome.
Another thing I realized is when I was in the gym, my anxiety and stuff was going and I was listening to this really hard music, right? And I was like having fights with other guys in my head. I was like, oh, I could take that guy. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm a 50-year-old guy in here. And these guys are just in here working out and I'm just in my head with all this nonsense. And I was like, wow, I think I need to start listening to like elevator music because
Yeah.
the energy of my brain is being affected by what I'm feeding it. And what I'm feeding it is vibration and sound, and that has a big impact on you. And so I started listening to like kind of like spa music, and I was like, God,
Yeah.
this is so terrible. And I remembered, Toby Mac. Do you know who Toby
Yeah.
Mac
Of
is?
course.
Yeah. So I just remembered he had this one song, I Need You, that was like real poppy, and I loved it. And like, makes me feel great. So I was like, maybe he's got some other music I can
Yeah.
listen to. Right. So I started 99% of what I listen to is now Christian contemporary,
That's
like pop
cool.
musics. Yeah, it was really this sort of just tipping point that happened with me almost within a 6-month span that I was like, all right, I am definitely not an atheist anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's remarkable, and it's phenomenal too the way that God can speak through us through so many things to get our attention, and clearly He's given you wonderful wisdom about this.
Yeah. So the first time that something came apart, I was like, I can fix this.
Yeah.
Okay, something happened there. If I just repeat whatever just happened there over and over again,
Yeah.
I can fix it. And once again, it was me falling forward, being
Yeah.
led down a path that I, did not direct myself. I just needed that direction. I can't really explain it, but, I started just testing out supplements. People would say, try this, try this, try this. And I would try things, sulfur being one of them, MSM, doing sulfur baths and including it into my diet. Well, it turns out that I have an aversion to sulfur. I have a problem clearing it out of my system, and it creates a massive amount of anxiety, but it's extremely helpful internally. So, in my program or playbook, I kind of hear some of the pitfalls that you're going to have, and here's some of the things that you're going to have success with. But if you have these pitfalls, here's how you can mediate it. But it was just that. It was just like, okay, well, this works, this works, this works. And then I identified what I thought were the major contributors to chronic pain, which, we kind of talked about a little before. And then I was like, all right, let me just find
Mhm.
compounds that are known to break those chemical bonds. And it just sort of evolved. And I knew that I had to create something for the rest of everybody else
Yeah.
because, it, my first son, if it wasn't for him, I mean, I had thoughts of checking out.
Hmm.
The pain was just so bad. And thankfully he was around. And then my second son was really the inspiration to turn it all around. But once I knew that that was happening and the relief and hope that I had, once it started happening, I knew that everybody else had to have access to this.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to create a supplement because it's the path of least resistance. Everybody's looking for a magic pill or something where they don't have to do a lot of work. And when I tell you this is super, super effective for 95% of the people that are using it, they're getting a real good response very quickly.
Yeah.
And, we could talk about the science about that. I don't claim it heals you. I don't claim it's a treatment. It's a supplement that helps your body do
Mm.
what it's supposed to do to help break down the pain makers. And then with the program, I just started typing in all the supplements I was using. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, what are these good for? Okay, these, let me categorize. These are good for fibromyalgia. These are good for oxidative stress. These are good for glycation. And then it just sort of evolved from there into the undo method, which is, it's on this platform, like a coaching platform. There's probably 25 videos, about 5 to 10 minutes each. It's very easy to digest. I believe it's something you kind of want to go back to, and kind of read or listen to it over and over. It is for $13.90 or 69 cents a month. You can have access to it. You can get through it in a week, like literally. I wanted to make it accessible to everybody. Or you can just buy it and you'll get all the updates and a free bottle of flexibility fuel for $196.
Wow.
And so I wanted to make it accessible. A lot of people were complaining that I was charging for it. When I go to those message boards, they're like, you should be giving this away for free. So I just thought the $13.69 charge was like a happy sort of compromise there. And then there's a lot of interesting thing. A lot of people claim that I never had fibromyalgia because I was able to reverse it. And
Hmm.
so I get a lot of people who are very doubtful that any
Yeah.
of this is even possible. But I want people to know, like, it's 100% possible. If you go back and look at my social media, you can see the mangled wreck that my body was in.
Yeah.
And I have the diagnoses for the joint replacements and the degenerative arthritis. And then my chiropractor was the one who diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. I want people to know that, like, I'm one of you, like,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm here for you. Like, I have this massive calling to help people in chronic pain. And if you have any questions, if people can like reach out to me, I'm going to sit down and talk with you and just give you direction. And if you want to buy my stuff, great. If not, I'm just happy to talk with anyone that needs some help with chronic pain.
Well, I love that. And I love your story. And I guess I, like you, believe that we have ultimately been programmed at such an intense level to believe in all these kind of limitations. And, there's a verse that says, my people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. And hearing you speak, there's so many things that we're doing that are basically counteracting the law of the spirit of life. Our bodies were meant to be living a life abundant and free. It is not God's will for anybody to be suffering like this. This idea that God's will for us could anti-life is just a lie, and all things are possible for one who believes. And also look at the ancient wisdom that has shown us there's a way for us to treat our bodies. And I love a lot of the good science that you brought into this because that has its place.
Yeah, if I can just jump in there so I don't forget. So a lot of this, I applied the science to a lot of the biblical things like
Yeah.
fasting, like not mixing linen and wool because it's important, the clothes that you wear, because the
Mhm.
polyester clothes, lower frequency than our body, we're donating electrons to the clothes all the time,
Wow.
creating free radicals in our body. And that's why I wear hemp, linen, wool. You can't mix linen and wool and you're donating. But if you're wearing it on its own, it's donating electrons back to your body, stabilizing those free radicals. Same thing with grounding, which is hugging trees. I've linked the science behind it. So it doesn't seem like this Viking old wives' tale. It's something that's rooted in science as well as spirituality.
And I think that's so powerful because a lot of times we think we know, but we don't know why God might have given us instruction about certain things. But being able to see that and link it, it should make us trust the things we don't yet know, because
Yeah.
there are so many other things like that
Yeah.
too that may not be revealed to us. Hey, there's a reason there. But if you can just get past, you're like, I have to know how everything works, you'd be willing to have some faith that,
Yeah.
you can't define everything.
Right.
But Dan, I love everything that you're doing. I thank you so much.
Thank
Remind
you.
us your website one more time, and then I'll of course.
Sure, sure. So undu.me. So undo.me is the website. And then on there is where the supplement is. And there's a link to the platform where the undo method is, which is the playbook. Flex is a discount code that anybody can use at any time. So it'll get you like 15-20% off, something like that. If anybody has questions about the science behind the supplement or why I think it works or anything about their chronic pain, then definitely reach out to me. I'm talking to somebody on Facebook right now whose daughter is dealing with fibromyalgia. So I'm here for you. I do want to make this my career so I can help as many people as possible. I think that it will at least push you into the right direction where you
Yeah,
can find your own healing journey if I'm not the one that's giving you the tools for it.
yeah. Hear everything that you've heard today and realize and expand your willingness to believe that it's possible for you to overcome. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is it's possible for you to come, receive healing, and then turn and take that healing to the world,
Yeah.
heal to heal. Thank you, and God
Thank you
bless.
so much. God bless.